This lesson is all about stakeholders. The objectives for the lesson, you're going to be able to understand what stakeholders in a business are. You're going to be able to identify the different types of stakeholders that a business may have. And lastly, you're going to be able to understand why it's really important that a business knows who its stakeholders are and why they must consider these stakeholders in every decision they make. So, what are stakeholders? Well, a very good definition is stakeholders are an individual or group of people that have an interest in a business, and that interest could be any type of interest at all. So it's an individual or group of people that have an interest in a business. Now, you've got a number of different groups of people who have an interest in a business and the different types of stakeholders, and I'm going to give you a list of the different types of stakeholders that a business can have. So the first group of people can be workers or staff. Okay, these people obviously have an interest in the business. You've got managers. Again, they're part of the workers or staff, but they're a different type of worker, and again, they have an interest in a business. You've got customers. Of course, they're important and they have an interest in the business. Suppliers, they supply goods to a business, so they're obviously interested in the business. You've got the government, and you've got the local community. So this list of 6 are just a few different types of stakeholders, and all these people or groups of people have an interest in a business, and we're going to be looking throughout this lesson that it's really important for you to understand that these stakeholders have a different type of interest in the same business. So we're going to take the first example of a school. The school has many different types of people or stakeholders that are interested in the school, and I'm going to list a few people or groups of people that have an interest in the school. You've got parents and pupils. These two groups of people have interests in the school. You've got Ofsted. These are the government organisations that look after and make sure that the school's running correctly. The government have an interest in the school. You've got staff, obviously people like myself who have an interest in the school. Investors, people who give money to the school. Suppliers, suppliers of food, stationery, books, computers, chairs, tables. All these suppliers have an interest in our school. And the head teacher. So you can see here there's quite a big list of stakeholders, and all these stakeholders have a different interest in the school, and I'm going to just give you an example of 2 different stakeholders in the school and explain to you the differences in how they are interested in the school. So if you take staff, for example, people like myself, why am I interested in the school? Well, of course I'm interested in the school to make sure it's open and it's running. If the school's going to be closing down, I want to know why, because obviously at the end of the day the school pays my wages. Why are suppliers interested in the school? Well, if the school is getting larger, the food suppliers may decide, hold on a second, we're quite interested in this because it means we may be able to provide more food, which means we will be able to make more money. And similarly, stationery and book suppliers may also have an interest, because if the school's going to get larger, it may mean that they're going to make more business, because they'll obviously need to supply more stationery and books. So let's take the example of a nightclub then. What kind of groups of people are interested in a nightclub and why? And what you're going to see in this list is that each stakeholder has a different interest in the business. So the first group of people, or the first group of stakeholders, are workers and staff. And of course they're interested in the business from the perspective of their job and their pay. So how much are we going to get paid, and do we have a job with the company? Managers, again, they're interested in the jobs and pay of the company. Customers have a different interest in the business. Again, they're also a stakeholder because they have an interest in the nightclub, but they have a different interest in the nightclub. And of course, they're interested in the types of services that the nightclub provides, the prices, and the types of music that the nightclub provides. Suppliers of drinks and equipment, of course, they have an interest in the nightclub because they obviously need to know when to supply drinks and equipment. You've got the government. Of course, they're very interested in the nightclub because they need to make sure that the nightclub's following the laws, and also that the nightclub pays their taxes. And lastly, the local community. They have a definite interest in the nightclub because of the noise levels and the possible jobs that the nightclub may provide. So you can see here that this list of stakeholders, there's different types of stakeholders, and each stakeholder has a different interest in the nightclub. So it's the same business, but it poses different interests to different stakeholders. So it's really important that a business knows its stakeholders. It needs to know what types of people are interested in our business. But why is it important that a business knows its stakeholders? Well, for each decision a business makes, it needs to know its stakeholders. And of course, once it knows its stakeholders, it can then look at the impact it's going to have on the different stakeholders. Because it can take its stakeholders into consideration, it may mean that because of their better decision making, it can increase their sales. And also, it means that they won't break the law and will meet legal regulations. If the business was not to take the government or the law into consideration, it may mean that they break the law. So it's really important that the company understands that it's one of its stakeholders is the government, and so that it meets the laws and makes sure that it doesn't break any of these laws. Again, it's really important that the company understands and appreciates that the local community and its customers are a key stakeholder. If they don't take these stakeholders into consideration, it may mean that the decisions they make are bad, and it means that they get a bad reputation. A company aims to try and be the best for all its stakeholders, so it takes all its stakeholders into consideration and should make a decision based on all the stakeholders. But of course, a business can't please every single stakeholders. Some stakeholders, unfortunately, may not be pleased. But what a company needs to do is to try and make sure that they meet, or try and best meet, all the stakeholders. But of course, in a realistic world, it may be difficult to meet the needs of all the stakeholders. So what we've learned today in this short lesson is that there are stakeholders. A stakeholder is an individual or group of people that have an interest in a business. And we've obviously talked about the different types of stakeholders that a business may have. Stakeholders like staff, managers, the local community, customers, suppliers, and the government. These are all different groups of people that have an interest in a business. And we've also talked about the importance that a business must have and knowing their stakeholders and making sure that every decision it makes, it takes each and every stakeholder into consideration, because if they don't, it may have a negative impact to the business.